This is a Dude Studios production. And hey, I'm the dude. Welcome back to Hey Bartender Podcast. Today's podcast, I will be interviewing Daniel Keaveney. Hopefully I said that right. I spelled it out phonetically when he told me how to pronounce it. But he is also known as Las Vegas Bartender on Instagram. This guy is really cool. He has a whole bunch of great stories and a whole bunch of information that you guys are going to love. So sit back, relax, enjoy the podcast. And Laura Hope in the Arctones, would you please get us started?
Hey bartender, pass me a drink. The reason that I'm here is I need time to think.
Yeah, so you take the lead. I'm a notebook. Anything you ask, I can answer.
Okay. Start off the show. Basically, all I just do is say, welcome, Daniel, and welcome to the show. Thank you for taking some time off to being on my podcast. Well, we've already talked about this before we hit record, but go ahead and tell everybody how you're doing.
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I started my career in Vegas when probably in my mid-20s. I was bartending on the Las Vegas Strip. I'm 41 now. But last year in 2 years ago in 2019, I became a sales rep in Las Vegas. And then this past October, I actually moved my whole family to a little small town in Kentucky to try to slow life down a little bit.
You said before we started recording that you moved to Kentucky to be a little bit closer to whiskey. And I'm sorry the people on the podcast won't be able to see it, but I can see you have a very impressive collection behind you.
Yes.
Extremely impressive, actually.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a whiskey hunter. I mean, the other side of it is just everything else, all the gin, vodka, liqueurs, everything else that you could possibly think of.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you got that home bar that everybody dreams about putting in their home.
Yeah.
So, like I told you before, we like to start off the show with a drink special, and if you would please give us a drink that you like to make or something that you've made on your own. Is it original?
So I typically go for drinks that don't make too many dishes, that it's easy to make at home, and that are pretty strong. And one of my favorites right now is called the Boulevardier. It's actually a riff on the Negroni. So instead, you take the gin, you swap out the gin for bourbon. So it's 1 ounce of each, bourbon, Campari, and sweet vermouth. And you just stir that, pour it over ice, garnish with an orange peel.
What kind of flavor do you get from that?
It's a bitter flavor. So a lot of palates aren't really acclimated to the bitter taste. But like they say, you got to try Campari at least 5 times before your taste buds really enjoy it. And believe me, once you start enjoying Campari, it's really a roller coaster all the way down.
Yeah. Campari, that's brewed in.
I know.
That's brewed in Illinois, isn't it?
Italy.
Okay.
Yes, it's an Italian aperitif.
I'm thinking of something completely different. Then I'm sorry.
Oh, you're thinking of Malort.
That's it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
that stuff is a different level of bitter.
Yeah, I had some guests on my show some time ago, and they talked about Malort, and they said it's an acquired taste, something you give somebody, for instance, their first drink on a 21 run or something like that.
Yeah, that's putting it nicely, being an acquired taste.
Well, what was the name of the drink again?
A Boulevardier.
Okay, so if anybody out there tries to make it and serves it to their customers, let us know. You can let me know through Instagram, Hey Bartender Podcast, or your Instagram, which is
Las Vegas Bartender. Las Vegas Bartender. I'm sorry,
but Las Vegas Bartender, and let us know what you think of the drink. Because if you're really into whiskey, which you seem to be, it's probably really good.
Yes. No, it's absolutely delicious. It has a lot of complex flavors that come about. My second favorite is, of course, the old fashioned. It's real simple, sugar, bitters, whiskey over ice. You're fine. You're done. But this is the other one I tend to go to a lot.
Well, it goes along with the subject. When I went to bartending school, they gave us they teach you like 50 drinks. you're guaranteed to remember about 8 or 9 of them when you graduate. But when I went out for the first time after learning about all these drinks, because I basically knew nothing about, I was 21 and basically knew nothing about alcohol or anything like that. I decided to try an old fashioned just because of its history and all that stuff. And the first one I got, the guy didn't have any oranges to muddle into the drinks, and so he thought a substitution would be orange juice. And to this day, I still think that was a bad idea.
Oh man, you just said so many bad things in that as far as the cocktail goes. I'm very classic and very particular about my old fashions. Number one, the original old fashioned never had anything muddled in it whatsoever.
Oh, really?
The original definition of an old fashioned is just spirit, sugar, bitters, and water.
Okay.
So that means you can substitute whiskey for rum, for tequila, for any spirit that you want. The sugar, it could be a liqueur, it could be Demonure syrup, it could be any type of sweetener that you want. And then your bitters, I mean, there are 10,000 bitters out there. I mean, it just depends on what your flavor of choice would be that night.
Right.
You stir those together, again, pour over fresh ice, and you got an old fashioned that's curated to your palate. Somewhere around the 90s, when all those sweet drinks were coming out, is when people started muddling all those cherries and oranges in it.
Yeah.
And it's what I like to call, and what I've learned from Las Vegas, it's called the Wisconsin old fashioned. The people in Wisconsin actually always have a muddled cherry and orange in their old fashions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's kind of like how Long Island iced tea changed when it reached Texas. All of a sudden, people were adding tequila to it.
Oh, yeah. Well, tequila's always been in it, though. It's 5 whites. So it's rum, tequila, gin, vodka, and triple sec. So 5 whites with a little sweet and sour and a splash of Coke.
Yeah, I've heard, probably like you, I've heard like dozens of different takes on that. So some people say it started out with just vodka, gin, rum, triple sec in Long Island, New York, and when it reached Texas, they started adding tequila to it.
Okay.
But different stories, it's kind of like playing the telephone game sometimes.
Oh, especially with alcohol. I mean, as you go down the line, and as old story goes, it's like a fish story. The story gets bigger and better as you go along.
Of course. So, you said you started bartending when you were 20 in Las Vegas?
Oh, boy, it goes even further back. I started pulling my first beer when I was 18 in Boston, actually, at the Union Oyster House. It's the oldest restaurant in America, right next to Faneuil Hall Marketplace.
Oh.
You only need to be 18 to actually serve in Boston. I didn't really get geeky into cocktails until about 2012. And that's when my original casino closed and I transferred to Caesar's Palace. I joined a national group called the United States Bartenders Guild, which kind of pushes people and does a lot of cocktail competitions. And I'm not talking about the flipping bottles and everything. It's real cocktail competitions on flavor and quality of the cocktail.
Yeah, they just finished their competition a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was never really good enough to actually win any of those competitions or even, be a face on the competition board as a finalist or anything. But I mean, it just pushed me further and kind of pushed my flavors and quality of drinks that I put out.
Okay. Yeah. So did you start bartending in Boston or did you get behind the bar when you moved to Las Vegas?
No, I started bartending when I was in Boston.
Okay.
So it all started very organically. I worked for a restaurant, and I started as the porter. I was just bringing in all the orders, cleaning the kitchen and that kind of thing, and then worked my way into prep cook, and I worked the entire line. I was going to culinary school at the time, so it kind of inspired me to work through the kitchen. Well, then a busboy called out, so I started bussing tables in the front of the house. A barback called out, and I started bringing up beer from the basement. The bartender called out, and well, there you go. I'm bartending now.
That seems to be the way everybody seems to step up in the restaurant industry, because I did the same thing. I mean, I was a dishwasher at one point, and then all of a sudden I'm setting up the salad bar, and then just kept going upwards.
I've always told people, that's the best way to learn the bar is by growing out from underneath. If you want to go to bartending school and think you're going to be an all-star somewhere, it's not really going to work out.
No, it doesn't really. I mean, when I went to when I graduated for bartending school, they had job placement assistants, but then I'd go to these places where they told me, go apply here. And then I go through the interview process, and then all of a sudden they say, you know what? We're looking for somebody with more experience. And I'm like, then why did you call the bartending school? And, thanks for wasting my time,
Yeah.
But through
I mean, I get that question a lot. What bartending school did you go to? Now, granted, I have gone through a lot of bartending schools, but that's just to reinforce my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as working and your working knowledge of a bar, you really got to start at the bottom.
Right. Because probably in my opinion, probably the most important thing you got to learn before becoming a bartender is customer service.
Absolutely.
And they can't. My teacher at my bartending school, she admitted full on that she could spend a week teaching customer service, but they didn't give her that amount of time. But that was the most important thing that she wanted us to take away from there. Learn 5 or 6 drinks, you'll be fine. But this is what I want you to learn: the sound of ice shaking inside an empty glass, and things like that.
That was really nice of her. I never had anyone tell me that. I always had the employers, and the bartenders, tell me that I'm, a POS and I really don't know anything, and I had to learn the hard way,
Yeah, well, my teacher, she was a very long, had been a bartender for a very long time before she became an instructor. In fact, she was a bartender in Vegas for quite a while before she moved to Oregon, and then bartended around there for a while. But I felt like I was lucky to have her as an instructor just because of her knowledge. And she wanted to concentrate on customer service, but the schools were mostly wanting to concentrate on, just show them some drinks, send them out,
So can I ask what school it was? Was it a national school of any sort, or was it just a local?
It was a local bartending academy in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
I'm not even sure if they exist anymore. But
one of the first schools I took, which was actually a really great school, was ABC Bartending. Mm-hmm. That's a national bartending school all across everywhere. Then they truly taught me how to pour and how to act behind a bar. All the other schools I've taken were really advanced classes and goes into the history and, all the stories behind all the liquors and all that. But to get my feet wet and actually know how to count and know how to pour, it came from both culinary school and that ABC bartending class.
Cool. ABC bartending class. I don't think I've ever heard of that. But
it is a national. It's a national school. I think it's based in Florida, but they have one pretty much in a lot of cities across the U.S.
Yeah, I interviewed a guy who was owner of a bartending school in New Jersey, and I mentioned the same thing to him about teaching customer service, and his take on it was during your pour test. You had to pour a certain amount of drinks in a certain amount of time. They have people going, come on, I want my rum and Coke, or, where's that martini? That's what his decision on how to teach the kids about customer service.
Yeah, no, and it's more than just customer service. It's basically dealing with people and being able to have a great conversation with somebody the entire time that you're actually working.
I agree.
I would say bartending is 90% people and 10% knowing your drinks.
Yeah, I agree. So even during my bartending days, I had to talk with people whether I wanted to or not. But majority of the drinks were just a mixer and a spirit. That's it. And
and I mean, even in Vegas, I mean that was the majority of the drinks I made. It was that 1 in 10 customer that actually wanted something fancy or knew that I knew what I was doing behind the bar. But 90% of the time it was either a beer and a shot or some sort of mixed drink, rum and Coke or vodka tonic or whatever.
Right. So you started off in Boston. What made you go out to Las Vegas?
So I graduated from Johnson & Wales University, which is a culinary school in Providence, Rhode Island, with a bachelor's in culinary arts.
Wow, you've moved around a lot.
Yeah. So I went, well, I mean, Providence was only 30 minutes away from where I lived in because I didn't actually live in Boston. I lived in the suburbs, kind of near Foxborough Stadium, and where the Patriots play down there. So it's kind of like right halfway between Boston and Providence.
Oh, okay.
So it was really only like a half-hour drive for me, and I got accepted to that culinary school the junior year of my high school career. So it was a real easy decision for me. I met a girl, and she got a internship in Vegas, and I kind of just shrugged the shoulders and said, "Hey, can I follow you?" And I started a brand new life in 2003.
Yeah.
With this girl that I wasn't even really dating. Now we're married. We have a family. We have a dog.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's really worked out. Yeah. So I mean, I've been with her since 2003, at the end of 2003, just about. So
Well, that's awesome. That's
yeah.
That-
So yeah, I mean, we bounced around a whole bunch because of COVID. Vegas kind of died at the time, and we felt like we needed a change, and we wanted to slow life down a little bit. And we moved to a small town in Kentucky, and it's been nice and quiet now.
Well, truth being told, because of the name of your Instagram profile, I wanted to ask a few questions about being a bartender in Vegas. Just because I go to Vegas once in a while, and although be honest to my listeners and you right now, I don't drink. It's a great once in a while thing, but
good for you. It is one of the worst things that you can do to your body. I still love it though.
I've thought of worse, even, or at least along the same lines of doing things to my body, but that's
anyways.
Yeah, let's get past that. But now, how difficult was it to get behind a bar in Las Vegas?
My first bartending job in Vegas, I had done probably 2 or 3 years of management when I first got to Vegas, because I had my degree. I should do better and all, and then I realized that in Vegas, bartenders are unionized out there, and they pay very well, and you get very good health benefits and vacation time and all that. So I'm like, you know what? Forget this management stuff. Let me go get the good stuff. And I applied at a little casino called Bill's Gambling Hall and Saloon. It's closed down now. It's now the Cromwell. That's just across the street from the Caesar's Palace. It's a small little boutique hotel now.
Yeah,
at the time it was.
I've walked down the strip many times, and I don't think I can ever recall it, but
it's right next to the Tropicana, right up at that corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and the Flamingo.
Okay, I know the area. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's right next to the Flamingo, right on the street. But it's a small little hotel, and I had applied. And at the time, they weren't doing all these online applications or anything. It was a written out, kind of application. And my application was in there for a few weeks. And again, being a small boutique, whatever, I go down there, and I find out that my application has been sitting on the manager's desk for a couple of weeks. So I marched my ass down there. I called the manager on the house phone, and I said, "Hey, my application's on your desk. Can we talk about it?" So she said, "Yeah, come on down the hallway." And I came right down the hallway, and I talked with her for probably about 20 minutes, and she offered me a bar backing job. And that's just kind of how it started, I walk the walk kind of thing,
Is it common for jobs in Las Vegas to be a bartender, to have to be a bar back for a little while?
In the union, yes. If you want to be a union bartender, typipally you do have to start as a bar back and work your way up. Even nowadays, they recommend, if you don't have any experience, to work as a bar porter and then work your way up to bar back and then to bartender, which I think is ridiculous depending on your experience. But the union does usually require you to be a bar back before you become a bartender.
Oh, okay. So, how long did that take for you to go from bar back to working behind the bar?
Probably about 3 years.
3 years?
2 or 3 years. I was a bar back. I made great money as a bar back. I had some really great bartenders, and I worked some really great bars in that hotel.
Mm.
I was probably making more than I was on some bartender shifts out there. um, I got really lucky with the place I was at. It's funny because you never know how well you are until you leave the place.
Right.
And thinking back, that was one of the best jobs I ever had.
Yeah. When I watch the bartenders do their thing in Las Vegas, truthfully, I go to the more touristy places just because I don't know any better. But I watch these bartenders, and sure, they're like one of the bars that are on the islands in the middle of a sea of slot machines. It always seems like they don't have a lot of people walking up to the bar or sitting at the bar, but the waitresses are constantly cocktail waitresses are constantly going up to them and out, up and out. But is there a lot of business there, or at the working at the bar?
Absolutely. I mean, it always depends on what shift, what bar, what location, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, in the Union in Vegas, there are front of the house bartenders and back of the house bartenders. So it's back of the house bartenders are the ones that make all the drinks for all the cocktail waitresses. They never have to talk to a customer, nothing like that. They pour all their drinks pretty much from a liquor gun. You got 3 liquor guns, all with measured pours, everything from Grey Goose to the cheapest of the cheap vodka that they put on there.
Yeah.
And, you want a vodka tonic, you press vodka and press the tonic in a glass. The girls already have the glass filled with ice, and it's bang and go. It's just a robot kind of position. I never liked that because I like the bartender customer kind of relation,
Yeah, it's almost, like you said, it's very robotic, and it's did you have to wait for a ticket to print out, or did they just walk up to you and say 3 vodka crans?
It depended.
Yeah.
It really depended on the hotel. So some hotels did have tickets print. Some hotels did not. I was really early on in the whole Vegas bartending thing back in the early 2000s or mid to late 2000s. So we didn't have too much tickets. We didn't have too much regulation. We just kind of serve the girls and go. They call a system and they call their drinks in a certain order. And
Well, for those of you playing the Hey Bartender podcast home game, this is what we call a snafu. Right at this point in the podcast, he lost signal on his cell phone. So I'm just going to take a second here to remind you guys to go to heybartenderpodcast.com. You can check out new episodes there. You can check out old episodes there. You can even pick up yourself a Hey Bartender podcast t-shirt if you are in the mood. Everything goes to help support the podcast and bring you a bigger and better show. So remember, visit www.heybartenderpodcast. And remember, share, like, and subscribe to the show. I would really appreciate it.
All right. Hey, man, technology here in Kentucky isn't the top notch. We're trying out here.
Yeah, that's all right. I always kind of expect it whenever I do these Zoom calls. But anyway, so what were we talking about? The
drink order, taking drinks in the service well. How the service well bartenders are a completely different kind of bartender.
So, did you have to deal with like top shelf liquors when you're a bar back or service bartender?
Not too many when you're a service well bartender. Sometimes we get a high roller at one of in the high limit lounge or something like that requests top shelf liquors, but generally speaking, not much at all.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, even out in front, there weren't too many high-end liquors at regular bars in Vegas because they all had gaming, and most of the drinks were comped. So they didn't even want that kind of liquor on the bar to entice the players to do anything. They wanted to try to keep their costs low on the bar.
See, that's where I started questioning, working behind the big bar out in the middle of the casino, because everything's comped. As long as you're sitting at a machine gambling or, at a table or something like that, all your drinks are comped. But, and I was wondering if, there were people that came in and wanted, top shelf anything, would they have to specifically request that, or when they're sitting at the how often does it, I was just curious, how often does that happen? I mean,
it happens occasionally. It depends on the hotel and how much you're gambling and everything like that. But now the way Vegas is going, all the hotels pretty much have a high limit or a high end cocktail lounge inside of there. And those people that are playing, those that big money, throwing 5-10 grand into a machine, they can afford to go into those high end cocktail lounges too.
yeah.
But also those kind of players either A, don't drink at all and just drink water while they're gambling, or B, they'll order something neat or just a vodka soda or whatever. They want their Grey Goose and soda, and they don't typically get high-end cocktails at all.
So
I really can't.
Not much call for something like Louis the 14th.
I have a great story about that. When I was at Caesar's Palace, I helped open the lobby bar right there next to the lobby. It was a high-end kind of gaming lounge that they had over there. And one night I had this young 20-something kid come through from the high limit lounge, and he wanted Louis the 13th, but he wanted Louis the 13th with Red Bull as a mixed drink.
Oh, dear God.
Yes. But you see, our shots were $350 a piece.
Yeah.
And he would throw me $400 every time and tip me $50 on every drink. You drink it how you want, buddy.
Yeah, that's all up to you now.
Absolutely. I didn't really care, although it kind of hurt me, to pour Red Bull over a glass of Louis the 14th. But you know what? Or Louis the 13th. But you know what? It was his deal. And that was a very rare occasion. A lot of times, if there was a gamer that was playing a lot of money, the cocktail waitress would actually contact the manager to get a special liquor approved to go to whatever bar that we were serving. So if they wanted, something special, I don't know, like a Kentucky Owl Dry State or a Louis the 13th or a super expensive vodka, they would just bring that bottle to the bar because they wouldn't hop around on their drinks. They would just drink that liquor.
Yeah.
So they just bring that one bottle for that one customer and say that it's okay.
It does make my stomach turn a little bit that you mix Louis the 13th with Red Bull, but hey, he's paying for it. Yeah. He's tipping you well. Do whatever you want.
Yep. And then when you get out to the front bars, it might not look all that busy sometimes, but those people that are playing the good money, typically when you hit something, some sort of big jackpot, they tip you out a lot of money.
Yeah.
It was very common for me to get $100 tip when I just served like 3 Bud Lights to this guy. They just kind of take care of you, or a $20 tip or whatever. And that's kind of where you made your money, is the regular gamers that actually know how to take care of your bartender when they win.
Right. I when I bartended in Oregon, we had Oregon Lottery, and we had poker machines. Now they've moved up to poker and slot machines, but there were 5 machines in every bar that I worked at, and anytime somebody got a royal flush or was doing reasonably well that particular night, they would tip me a little bit off of what they were, whatever they were gambling. But
yep.
you could tell the people that weren't doing that well by how many trips they made to the ATM. And then you see them win a big jackpot, and then 20 minutes later they go back to the ATM. Those people never tipped, but you could understand that their whole entire paycheck was about to pay for whatever Oregon Lottery works towards.
Yeah. There was always an unwritten local rule. Like, every bar in Las Vegas pretty much has gaming in it, not just on the strip, but way off the strip too.
Right.
It's kind of how a lot of bars make some good money. And it was kind of always an unwritten old local rule that whenever you hit a jackpot, 10% goes to the bartender.
Yes.
So if I hit a $1,000 jackpot, they would get $100. If I hit a $4,000 jackpot, $400 would go to the bartender. And it was really up to the person and the bartender. Whatever. You throw whatever you want to me and I'll be happy, but it was always kind of like an unwritten rule. And if I got an old local that, typically games in Vegas that's what happened, and that's kind of where I made my money.
Yeah, I can see that, because that same thing kind of happened to me. Although the top jackpot you could win in an Oregon lottery machine at the time was only $600. So,
Ooh,
uh,
but
every once in a while you get one of those generous people that would give you 10% or even $20. There were times even $5 I'd greatly appreciate it off of that.
yeah, I get that.
Or some Keno winner, one of my friends, it wasn't my shift, she had a person win a couple $1,000s on Keno one night, and he had, to the point where he had to go to the state lottery commission to get his winnings. Yeah, and he came back a couple days later and gave a tip to her for that, and I thought, oh, why doesn't that happen on my shift? But
I know. It's always the cocktail waitresses that really make out, right?
right. Did you ever have any problem like sensory deprivation or anything like that working in a casino? Because
Man, it more or less moving out of the casino here in Kentucky, it's so quiet here. There's no ding, there's no yelling, there's no screaming. It's so quiet here,
Mm-hmm.
I did a little video probably about 8:30 at night on a Friday night from the liquor store that I work at. Now, my liquor store has a drive-through window, a full-service drive-through window also. And I was working the drive-through window. It was 8:30 on a Friday night, and I just did a little video, a panoramic video. There wasn't a frigging car or any noise or nothing that you could see at all. And it really boggles my mind, and it's so peaceful here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sensory deprivation, you don't notice it when you're working there. It just kind of goes away. The slot machines, that all that noise just kind of goes away as you're working there. But man, when you get away from it, you really do notice it.
You get a little tinnitus. Did you notice some tinnitus when you got to Kentucky or anything?
No, not really. Yeah. But I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So I want to hear a good Las Vegas bar story before we move on to what you're doing now.
I always have this one that I turn to, and I was at the Venetian actually, and I got a young couple that came to my bar, and they were about to get married the next day. It was a holiday weekend of some sort, and they came to my bar. It was probably like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and they were feeling good, but they were celebrating and everything, and they were also foreign. They were from Mexico. So I said, they ordered their drinks. I politely said, yes, can I check both your IDs? One guy didn't have his ID. I couldn't serve him, and he gets very irate, starts yelling at me, telling me he's going to call the manager, and he ends up storming off. He's going to find this manager. He leaves his girl there at the bar also with no ID. Well, I can't have someone sitting at my bar with no ID. So I just asked her to move away, and she was polite about it and everything. He comes storming back, yelling at me, telling me, you're going to give me an effing beer and this and that, and cursing at me and yelling at me. I said, no, I'm really not going to at all. And he ends up picking up another customer's beer, throwing the beer at me out of the beer bottle, and then it was a gentle toss in my direction, the beer bottle. It hit my leg and fell to the ground. Security made a big deal about that because they watched it all on camera. And he walked away again. Well, at this point, I had called security, and I told them the whole situation, and they said, yeah, we got him. And I see him walking backwards with about 5 or 6 security guys and a security dog barking at this guy as they're walking backwards towards the back entrance.
Yeah.
And the guy just keeps saying, just arrest me. We don't want to arrest you. Just leave, just peacefully leave. We don't care. No, just arrest me. So he finally started approaching the officers and trying to attack them. Well, that's assault. They finally took him down and everything. Meanwhile, the girlfriend disappeared somewhere, but I saw her come around the corner, and she's fucking videotaping this whole thing, laughing the entire time. So you got to think, this guy is going to be locked up on a holiday weekend, overnight, for God knows how long, in a foreign country, and who knows when he's going to be able to see a judge, because they're going to be backed up from the whole thing. My conclusion from that whole episode, he just didn't want to get married.
I've heard stories of guys that tried not to get married, but that by far is probably the most elaborate.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, there were dogs. He was barking. He was cursing at me. I got beer thrown at me. It was a pretty wild ride there.
Well, Las Vegas security, though, I figured that you wouldn't have to call security. All you had to do was just look at the ceiling, raise your hands.
I kind of did, As soon as I did call security, they were already on it, But,
yeah. That's a great story. I always ask this of people that work in certain areas. Did you ever meet anybody famous while you were working there?
Yes. Yes. So not while working, but when I was on a search for a great Manhattan, I was actually still in my younger years of bartending, and I thought everyone would have a great cocktail in Vegas. Well, that's not true. You have to go to the right bars to get a great cocktail in Vegas. Mm-hmm. And I went over to the Bellagio, and I got a Manhattan. And lo and behold, I hear a voice behind me, and it was Nicolas Cage and his wife sitting right there at the in the lounge area. As a bartender, I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I'm not going to go over and shake his hand or anything like that. But that's pretty cool, me being this close to Nicolas Cage right now. Well, before I finished my Manhattan, probably about 4 people tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, can you take a picture with me and Nicolas Cage for me? I mean, I'm gracious. I took a picture, but this happened like 3 or 4 times, and I'm getting kind of friggin' annoyed. Well, I finished my second Manhattan, and I just waited, Nicolas Cage, and I said, all right, hey, thank you very much. I'm just going to get out of here. He said, no. And I quote, you should at least come over here and sit down for a drink and for all that bullshit that you had to pull up with. Okay, absolutely. He had a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue and a couple of bottles of red something on it, some sort of red wine. And I sat down and we had a few drinks together. And I hung out with Nicolas Cage for the afternoon.
That's awesome.
It was. It's funny because everyone says, was he really weird or anything? I said, well, no, he's rich, so he's very eccentric.
Oh, if he's drinking Johnny Walker Blue, yeah.
He was a great guy, though. He was a good guy to sit down with and have a conversation with, and he was nice and gracious and all that stuff. Yeah. Every time anyone took a picture with him, he would send a round of drinks to that table.
Oh, really? Very gracious.
Yeah. He was a really nice guy when he was out in public.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I never got to meet anybody famous, so I live vicariously through you guys when I bring you onto my show. So, But that would be cool to meet Nicolas Cage like that. But not being a fanboy managed to get you to time to hang out with him. That actually is really cool. Instead of trying to do a selfie with him behind you or something like that. And
I really tried not to fanboy because I mean you'd see famous people all the time and they don't want all that if they're going to a bar. They just want to be treated like a regular person.
Sure.
Anyways. One other encounter, and it wasn't a super famous person or anything, but Chuck Pagano, when he was coaching, he's the coach of the Colts.
Oh, okay.
Back when the Patriots and the Colts had that Deflategate game, and there was the deflation of the football and all that stuff. He was actually sitting at my bar the weekend right after that. And I was working with a bartender called Boston Mike at Caesar's Palace at a bar that's no longer open. Well, Boston Mike had a Patriots bottle opener on him. And he said, hey, Dan, watch this. I said, no, don't. Come on. He just lost the worst game of his entire career on this, No, don't do it. No, I'm going to do it. So he finally goes over. He says, hey, Chuck, look at this. And he flashes his Patriots bar bottle opener to him. And, that gets the whole conversation going. And Chuck, he was very gracious. He was a friendly guy and everything. We had a whole conversation. Me, I'm a big Patriots fan, originally from Boston, just grew up outside of Foxborough Stadium. And, we had a whole conversation about that whole game. And that was probably a bigger moment than the Nicolas Cage moment for me because I am a big football fan.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've never been a sports fanatic, and I thought for a long time that was going to hurt my bartending career because when you think about bars, people, well, you see sports bar after sports bar after sports bar, but I can talk your ear off all day about the Beatles or, music in general. You want to talk about
Yeah.
the Beatles, Billy Joel, Metallica. Yeah. I'll prepare for at least a half-hour lecture. But, no, I found a lot of my customers started to realize that after a while, but, when it came to sports, I'm just like, ah.
Yeah. So you like Metallica, no?
Yeah, yes.
So a recent question came up, and my wife is rolling her eyes at me right now. I saw a post on there that Metallica is now classified as classic rock.
Uh,
How do you feel about that?
well, I've been complaining about that with my friends and family for the last couple of weeks.
God.
It actually wasn't Metallica that, because I've been a Metallica fan for a long time.
I saw them twice in concert.
I think I started being a fan of theirs from And Justice for All up, even though Master of Puppets is my favorite album of all time. But it was just maybe 3 weeks ago here. I live in Texas, and I've got the classic rock station on at work while I'm driving around my work truck, and all of a sudden Nirvana comes on. And I'm like, Smells Like Teen Spirit is on a classic rock channel now. That was on when I was in high school.
Right? And it's not classic rock. That's more punk, I guess, if anything. I mean, classic rock, the Eagles, the Stones.
Yeah.
There's a certain sound to classic rock, and oh yeah.
Yeah, it ages you a little bit. The last podcast or last interview, I brought my friend back for a second podcast, and she and I joked about that a little bit. And I mentioned how I heard Nirvana on a classic rock station, and she goes, "Oh, you're not in trouble until you hear your music that you like in an elevator." And
Shit.
because she's
I could just see Master of Puppets coming on,
played on a classical piano or something like that.
Yeah. No, my wife just interjected right now with a few other people that I've kind of run into in Vegas too.
Oh, sure.
Snoop Dogg, Bobby Flay, and O.J. Simpson.
Did you get a contact high from Snoop Dogg?
No, he was actually promoting. Where is it? He was promoting his cachaça, and I got him to sign a bottle, and it was just a quick meet and greet.
Oh, okay.
The O.J. Simpson story is actually kind of a funny story. I was setting up for a nonprofit kind of charity event over at the Palms, and I was taking out one of those big lamp heaters that they have at parties and whatnot, and I was pulling one out. And all of a sudden, I get knocked over by this guy, and it was O.J. Simpson. He was coming down the stairwell, and he knocked me over, and he picked me up and pat me on the. Oh, sorry, brother, And him and about 4 or 5 other guys come following up. Lo and behold, I'm watching the news the next morning. O.J. Simpson is arrested for armed robbery at the Palace Station Hotel. He
that
was
night,
off and going to get his shit over. Yeah, that night he knocked me over.
Oh, his mind was on other things. He just didn't see you. That's
no. I was just kind of setting up, and he knocked me over in the back hallway.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then Bobby Flay, you know who Bobby Flay is?
Yeah. Cook, Food Network, Iron Chef. Yeah.
I've run into him twice. There was a United States Bartender Guild meeting at one of his newer restaurants over at the Aria, and I got him to sign a huge kind of sign I brought to the meeting. It said "Good Food, Good Times," and he signed it for me. And then I was over at the Palms again, and I run into him just at a regular bar, and just had a quick little conversation. It's kind of the place to just kind of run into people,
Yeah. Everybody goes to Vegas at least once or twice in their lives, or a year sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah. No, but anyways, yeah, no, she just interjected with those other few, and I mean, there are so many interactions that I've had that I've kind of just forgotten about. I've run into Paris Hilton a few times when she was over at when she was over at Dre's inside the Barbary Coast, or it was Bill's Gambling Hall at the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So again, just left and right, you kind of just run into people there, and it's not really a big deal at one point,
Yeah. The best I can say when I was in Las Vegas is I was just wandering the casinos and walked into Planet Hollywood and played a couple tables there. And all of a sudden I see this huge group of people walking in a straight line right through the center of the casino. And in the middle of that group is Britney Spears. And,
oh, shit.
and then, of course, me being the type of guy I am, I'm sitting there wondering is it worth it getting my arm broke off if I try to reach out? But because the guys that were standing around her were like 2 or 3 times my size, and
yeah, she always had a lot of security around her, and I guess she had a lot of rules that that were put on her if she was going to have her residency there at Planet Hollywood too.
Oh, really?
Like she couldn't be out drinking, she couldn't be out partying like she normally does. She had a lot of rules put on her if she was going to have that residency over at Planet Hollywood.
Yeah, I didn't understand why she was going through the center to the casino, but whatever.
You have to get from point A to point B one way or another, right?
Yeah. Now, another. I'm sorry, I keep asking questions about Las Vegas, but
I love it.
For me as the average tourist, you have it. Like Danny Ocean said in Ocean's 11, casinos are built like labyrinths to keep people in. And do they have an easier way for the employees to get around?
No.
No?
No. We just learned the layout good enough. That way we can get to point A to point B a lot easier. But man, even underground, I mean, it's a little simpler when you're underneath the casino in the employee area, but the hallways are never ending. I mean, they go fully straight forever. I mean, we learned the back ways, we learned the back doors and everything like that, but there really is no good way to get out.
So after standing around for an 8-hour shift, did you wish you had a segue to get from point A to point B, or?
Sometimes, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, at times when I was working at the Venetian, at times it would take you 10 minutes to get down to the employee dining room. It would take you a good little long time to actually walk from point A to point B, and that's at a pretty good clip too.
Yeah.
You're power walking at that point.
I'm hungry, but I got to get back to behind the bar. I got to run.
Yeah, but again, since it was union, you have a full hour for your lunch break.
Oh, nice.
So, I mean, you didn't have to run all that hard,
Yeah.
You could kind of take your time, but.
Okay, so moving up to the present now, you said because of COVID, you decided you and your family decided that you had enough of Vegas for now, at least. And so what made you change jobs, get out of bartending, and start talking about whiskeys or collecting whiskey?
Well, I've always been kind of interested in spirits in general, and brown spirits have always been one of the passions of mine. In August, I actually took a road trip from Vegas to Kentucky, and I rented the car and drove all the way out to Kentucky. It took me 2 days. I slept somewhere halfway in between for about 4 hours, got back in my car and continued on my way. And I spent a whole week in Kentucky, and everyone thinks it's crazy, and it really is. But I spent the whole week, and it was the most beautiful August week that Kentucky has ever seen. The first time I'm there, of course, right? There's no humidity. It was like 75 degrees, nice and chilly in the morning, nice and warm in the afternoon kind of thing. And I told my wife I kind of wanted to move to Kentucky, and she just went on Zillow, tried to figure out where the affordable housing was and everything like that. And we found our house. We were able to sell our house in Vegas for quite a bit of money because we bought during the dip, and we made quite a bit of equity in it. And we bought a house in cash here in Kentucky. It's in Owensboro, Kentucky, so it's a little further west, about 2 hours west of where all the bourbon's really made, out in Bardstown and Lexington and, all those storage towns. But man, it's just so quiet and peaceful here.
Yeah.
And we really saw Vegas changing a lot during COVID, because a lot of the hotels started lowering their room rates and like to really dirt cheap to try to get people in, but it just kind of attracts the wrong crowd.
Yeah, read a couple news articles
there were a
about
lot
that.
of fights.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really changed Las Vegas, and we were really not enjoying ourselves. I mean, I did have a great job. I didn't enjoy it, but it was a great paying job. My wife had been out of work for a while. Just because of COVID, she couldn't find any work at all. And we decided we needed a big change. We needed to change the way we were doing things. And 6 months into it, sure, we're struggling a little bit. We don't know anybody here, but at the same time, we're a lot happier than we were.
Well, that's the important thing. So what exactly are you doing right now?
Currently, I'm actually working for a chain in Kentucky called Liquor Barn. It's a liquor store, and I'm kind of the store's spirit specialist. You know, I mean, I kind of know my stuff when it comes to spirits.
Sure.
And yeah, I'm just working every day or 5 days a week over there, 40 hours a week for a liquor store. I'm getting ready to take on a new job in management at one of the restaurants here that pays significantly more. Bartending across the U.S., the federal minimum wage is only $2.13 an hour.
Right.
And that's what Kentucky does. That's what Boston did. And I can't work for that after working in Las Vegas, you know?
No. Especially
so I'm going to get back.
Especially when your tips are going to probably average between $100 and $200 a night. That'd be tough to live on.
I mean, year round, I mean, as you know, Vegas goes into their ups and downs, their dips and pools, and year round, my average was $100 a night. From $500 to $30. At the end of the year, my average was about $100 a night that I worked for in Vegas. Tips are not bad in Kentucky, from what I'm told. But what it is it's the hourly rate, it's the insurance that people can't offer. It's all those securities that I enjoyed as a bartender in Vegas that just aren't offered here in Kentucky. So I'm going to get back to my roots. I do have my bachelor's degree in culinary arts, and I'm going to start managing for a restaurant and try to get some of that stuff going. So
now, being a spirit specialist, people can walk up to you and say, I'm looking for this type of liquor. What are your suggestions? And I'm on this kind of budget. So it's like given like best example I can think of right off the cuff. I'm looking for a whiskey, a little bit on the smoky side. I've got $40 on me. I'm tired of Jack Daniels. What would you suggest?
Actually, there's a company called MB Roland. They do a fire smoked kind of whiskey. It's a little more expensive than the than $40. It's probably more in the $50 or $60 range, but it's going to hit all those notes far out. I'd probably go through our spirits section and kind of point out different ones and explain to them the history, or not just the history, but the flavor profiles that go into it at that price point that you're looking for. It's funny, here in Kentucky, people are really about their Kentucky bourbon, though.
Yeah.
We have Woodinville. Woodinville is one of the most storied outside of Kentucky whiskeys nowadays. But because it's made in Washington, everyone's passing it by. We have one of the number one whiskeys, according to Whiskey Advocate, was the Dickel Bottled and Bond. But people are passing it by, and I've had someone say to this, I'm not going to buy it. It says Tennessee on the label. So, I mean,
yeah, okay.
People are really about their Kentucky whiskey, and it gets a little tough for me because I'm an all spirits lover, from gin to tequila to rum to, I love all spirits, and people are really just zoned in and focused on their Kentucky bourbon here for a good reason.
Right. Well, sorry to get off the Kentucky bourbon version, but I just have to ask, you and I being Metallica fans, I do have a bottle of Blackened, Metallica's whiskey.
Yeah.
Do you have one of those?
I don't. I haven't heard great things about it.
I haven't heard anything about it. But
okay. I mean, I tasted it. It's okay. It's not something I'd snub at, but I haven't read too many good reviews about it.
Mm. Yeah, it's just another one of those things Metallica decided to invest in, which I kind of think is funny since they all seem to be talking about cleaning up, and James has gone through rehab 2 or 3 times, and now they're investing in whiskey.
I think it's that whole thing. Like after the Garage Days album or the Garage album, I think that's where they became like a classic rock band. You know, they kind of slowed down their whole style and everything. I tend to listen to all the albums pre-Garage Days. You know.
Now, Garage Days, not Garage Days, not Garage Inc.
Garage, whatever it was. I mean,
before
when
Jason
Newsted.
Garage, yeah, before Jason Newsted joined the band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So I mean, the Black Album, Kill 'Em All, you know, Ride the Lightning,
yeah,
Faster Puppets. That's what I remember Metallica as.
Right. And then all of a sudden, Bob Rock started changing them up a little bit. Don't even get me started about the Saint Anger album, but
again, I stopped following them after that. You know, I kind of stuck in those kind of 4 albums.
Well, just in the very, very off chance that they may be listening to this podcast, I will stick up for them on their most recent albums, Hardwired to Self-Destruct. It actually feels like it's taking it back to like the Master of Puppets days type of stuff.
No kidding.
Right. Just so I can kiss their ass a little bit, I guess. But
no, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't mind trying to listen to them again, but yeah, I've really stuck with the first 4 albums.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Because I jumped on. Everybody thinks I jumped on the bandwagon when the Black Album came out, but really right around where Justice was popular, that's where I jumped on because I was learning how to play the drums at the time, and I really, really wanted to learn how to play one, and so I listened to that one constantly just so I could do the double bass thing right in the middle of the song. And that was awesome, but I did have to learn the Black Album stuff because that's what everybody knew when I played. You know, when my band went up and we just wanted to get other high school kids pumped up. We knew they knew Enter Sandman, so we'd play it. You know. But anyway.
Yeah, and it was funny when I was a freshman in high school. I took a English class that we needed to recite poetry, and they said we could recite, you know, a song because a song is technically poetry, and it was Enter Sandman that I recited.
I had an English teacher do that to me too, but I think I ended up reciting the lyrics to Purple Haze. I don't think she liked that.
Oh man, I mean that's a classic.
Yeah. It was the first song that popped into my head, and out of nowhere. I mean, I was listening to Jimi Hendrix at the time, but yeah, she said recite poetry, so I thought, see, Purple Haze are in my brain, but she she gave me a lecture with the finger pointing, saying that it had to do with drug abuse, and I'm like, yeah.
Of course, you know, they're teaching us a lot in those songs.
He did it so I don't have to.
Right.
Anyway, so your plans for the future, you're going to start getting back into restaurants?
Yeah, get back into restaurants, start managing. I mean, I would love to make enough money to actually open my own place out here. It really is set, you know, 10 or 20 years in the past out here. You know, they really aren't progressive with much. They have one restaurant here in Owensboro that actually makes great cocktails. Other than that, it's just going to be a regular bar and shop kind of bar. Of course, a lot of them have a great whiskey selection, and I mean, a lot of the bar and shop bars have great people behind the bar, but sometimes I really want that great cocktail too.
Sure.
There are so many locations in Vegas that have those great cocktails that can be dive bars too, and you don't find that here in Kentucky at all. So I would like to progress it a little bit, but again, I would need an investor. There's a lot of things going behind opening a bar, you know?
Oh, sure. And in Kentucky, you don't get your margaritas in those yard-long plastic...
No, I mean, again, I'm very stubborn with my classic cocktails. I mean, a daiquiri isn't a big frozen red drink. It comes in a coupe. It's just lime juice, or lime juice, simple syrup, and rum.
Yeah.
And the margarita is kind of the same thing. 3 ingredients: your triple sec, your lime juice, and your tequila. Maybe a little sweet and sour if you wanted a little sweeter, but not much more.
What kind of bartender are you? Do you prefer the pour spouts, the jiggers, or what's your method of pouring?
So I find the pour spouts. I definitely have my count down to a quarter ounce. I can pour a quarter ounce without even thinking about it. I can pour 2.5 ounces without even thinking about it. Jiggers I always use when it comes to multi-ingredient cocktails, just because you want that perfect balance and for what they're actually thinking about. So I go back and forth. I use the jigger, but it's not really needed for mixed drinks or something simple like a margarita, in my experience.
Have you ever had to deal with a bubble pourer?
A bubble what?
A bubble pour spout? They've got that little ball in it, so when it thinks that it reaches a shot, and then it's supposed to click.
And I freaking hate those.
That means you're a real bartender.
Yeah, I absolutely hate those. I mean, I've gotten pretty good at just pouring it straight out of the bottle without a pourer. Also, I usually pour 2 to 2.5 ounces just straight out of the bottle. Without any problem. I can pour 1.5 ounces straight out of the bottle without any pour. It's harder to do those smaller quantities accurately.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but I've just been pouring that good 1.5 ounces to 2.5 ounces pretty accurately.
Yeah, one bar I worked at, they decided to integrate that, and I got tired of them within 2 hours of my first shift. These they don't work correct. Well, you're pouring it wrong. You're not holding it right. I'm like, no, I'm doing fine. Or especially after a week of pouring something thick like Bailey's out of a bubble pourer, then they're pretty much useless.
And I mean, that's the thing. Not every liquor pours exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, some of your liqueurs pour a lot slower than some of your vodkas or gins, rums, or anything like that. I find it's not even a count. Even you got to kind of feel the bubble. It sounds funny, but those bubbles coming out of the end of the pour when you turn the bottle upside down, you kind of feel that in your hand. You just kind of know about how much is in that glass at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a feel than anything else.
Yeah, I even hadn't been bartending for very long, and I'd turn it over, click. That didn't feel right. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really a feel. I mean, bartending schools always teach a count. You got to count to 3, or you got to count to 7, or you got to get your own count. I lost the count a long time ago, and it's more of a feel than anything else.
Mm. Yeah, they taught me to count to 4, and that's a perfect shot. And
but everyone counts to 4 differently. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's not a full shot.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4. You'll get better. So it's different for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. But like you said, you develop your own feel for it, and it all works out. Well,
yeah.
Anyway, before we close up here, is there anything you want to promote? Do you, talk about something that you want to promote, or tell people where they can find you on social media or Instagram?
So my Instagram is Las Vegas Bartender. I post a lot of whiskeys lately that I find from my bourbon hunting. I do a few cocktails here and there. Been slowing down on social media a little bit. I did just start a TikTok, and that's Las Vegas Bartender, but with an underscore at the end of it. There's another large TikTok account with my same Instagram name. So it's easy to get those confused. But yeah, I mean, I just keep chugging along, and I've really been slowing down my life. I was just interviewed by Chilled Magazine for influencers on Instagram.
Oh, cool.
And they gave me about 10 questions. The article should be coming out in the next issue or 2. And they asked me a whole bunch of how I grew my Instagram account. And although I know how to do it, I haven't been doing it properly lately. You know, it hasn't really been a focus of my life since moving to Kentucky. I've really been focusing on my family and really just trying to get the hustle and bustle out of me.
Well, okay, people, it is last call for alcohol. Come on up to the bar, pick yourself something up nice, and if you're lucky, I won't say something smart aleck to you. Special thanks to Daniel Keaveney for being on the show. It was great having the show. Those stories that he was telling, weren't they awesome? I mean, get to hang out with Nicolas Cage and all that sort of thing. That's just super cool. If you want to know more about Daniel, just follow him on Instagram. Go to @LasVegas.bartender and check out all the stuff that he posts on there. A lot of pictures of drinks, drink recipes, whiskeys, stuff that he tries, because this guy is an authority on this sort of thing. So go check him out and follow him right now. As usual, I got to extend a thank you to Laura Hope and the Arc Tones. You guys got to follow her. Her music is just really cool. And I also want to remind you guys, share, like, and subscribe to Hey Bartender Podcast. Tell your friends about it. And if you want to pick up some Hey Bartender Podcast stuff, go head on over to www.heybartenderpodcast.com. I got t-shirts for sale. You can catch up on old episodes. You can listen to new episodes. It's all there on heybartenderpodcast.com. Also, if you want to contact me in any way, shape, or form, best way to do it is my email address, dude@heybartenderpodcast.com. Follow me on Instagram or Facebook. Both of those are Hey Bartender Podcast. DM me a message. Tell me a drink recipe. If you want to be on the show, tell me that. If you are a music group and you want your music to be heard on my show, all you have to do is send me an email and I will make it happen for you. I love talking to all you people. You guys are just really awesome, and every single bartender out there has their own story. And, you know, that's what it's all about. You know, it's every time I do one of these shows, like when I was talking to Daniel just now, it's like sitting in a diner late at night or sitting at somebody's garage and just talking about your day and swap stories. It's a lot of fun, and, you know, share a couple drink recipes so you can take it into your own bar, and it's just really fun for me. So if you're a bartender, server, whatever, and you have some cool stories and you want to talk about them on this podcast, email me, dude@heybartenderpodcast.com, or reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook, both of those, Hey Bartender Podcast. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, as usual, I just want to wish you all lots of love, lots of sex, lots of happiness, and don't take any shit from anyone. Good night.
What do you mean it's last call? I just got here!